And so I said to him, of course I know the tango, just get off my lawn and give me back my pizza. Coming up next is the first of a brand spanking new full-part biopic of one of the coolest artists of our time, Steven Zero. It's called Zero, a love affair with nothing, and it's presented by a veritable national treasure, Maurice Peacock. Take it away, Maurice.
Please note, if you're of a nervous disposition, prone to heart palpitations, or culturally deficient, this program could cause permanent damage. We are not liable for any revelations you may undergo during the program, and if you fear the sublime, please turn over after the tone.
Artist, thinker, writer and thinker Steven Zero is cherished in the public consciousness, most of all for his groundbreaking conceptual postmodern deconstructivist statements known to the layman as art. In this, the first episode of a landmark series hosted by me, Maurice Peacock, allow yourself a trip into the dazzling world of Umeni, Kunst, art. Welcome. As you ought to know, Steven Zero's artistic leviathans include the popular sculpture The Lamp Post, which stands imposingly in New York's Central Park, blending in as it does with such brilliant irony among all the other lampposts. The 63-foot cast-iron model of a leek, aptly named the Massive Leek, lies imposingly at the bottom of the River Taff in a small provincial town called Wales. But perhaps the most well-known and widely discussed piece he has made is The Screaming Sandal, now held, with difficulty, in the Tate Modern. More on that later. By far, one of the most appealing aspects of Steven's art was its communal focus. He was a man of the people, and that was manifest in everything he did. His humble background and modest ambition meant he saw himself as more of a social orchestrator than an artist. Indeed, his art was in fact just a figment of society itself, a functioning metaphysical element of the cultural dynamics we move in every day. Perhaps I should explain it in meteorological terms. His art was an all-encompassing ideology cloud, drifting over your tiny heads, occasionally raining moist pellets of cerebral clarity down upon a society of numbskulls, watering the herb gardens of discussion, and curing the droughts of cultural ignorance which have so scorched your modern society. His was the ideologically driven art weather system that Michael Fish dared not predict. Hurricane Stephen, we called him in wry jest, knowing within ourselves that his tempestuous nature was not only more devastating than any Katrina or Andrew, but more tangible, more real, and even windier. At parties and intellectual soirees, his untamable spirit, untouchable intellect, and unquenchable imagination was omnipresent. Critical debate has centred on his favoured Bellinis smeared with Gouda, and here I must credit Gabriel Flegmont's marvellous memoirs, A Quivering Spire of Marmalade. Between nibbles, he was connected with and had a great influence on the world's most important thinkers of the time. From his contribution to Ludger Reinhardt's The Theory of Pseudo-Skiffle, through to the proofreading of Jacob Walkowitz's Bubble Machine, stretching far beyond into the semiotics of Marco Machetti's epic haikus. His art has moved us all, at least the best of us, and will continue to do so throughout the ages. His work is a cultural artifact deeply embedded in the public psyche of nations across the world, excluded and perhaps exempt from the school's syllabi, but no less integral to our social identity than the cherished year of 1312 is for the French, or the Battle of Clamberforth Pond for the Greeks, or even, might I say, the corduroy trilby hat for the Spanish. His work has become symbolic of the modern spirit of our nation, and it is merely the whys and the hows that I hope to elucidate. Beyond the polka-dot coasts of our island nation, the civilized world as a whole might do worse than to pause for a casual genuflection in the direction of your radio set. Not in praise of my presenting skills, but to Stephen, who has contributed boundless energy, limitless patience, and several hours simply for our emotional enrichment. In fact, most individuals alive today who have felt the elation of holding a newborn child, experienced the passion of true love, or marvelled in awe at a sunset, must attribute at least 28% of that to the work of Stephen Zero. His work engulfed social discourse, shattered the family structures, touched up the feminist and slapped the politicians. It was the current of the oceans, the beam of the sun, and the life in the soil. His was the wind and the rain, the moon and the stars, the sun and the cosmic world. For Stephen, the art could never truly have been attributed to him. As we have established, it was a part of us all. This explains why he considered the commercial trade of his physical work a droll, arbitrary byproduct of the true art that lay in its socio-political impact. Indeed, his income only permitted Zero a meagre existence of a rudimentary sturgeon farm and a small collection of bespoke Kenyan thermidors. It is this humble associability which allows us to engage with Zero's art through such glorious media as this documentary. But where did it all begin? He was born Stephen Luke Billington Billington on May 3rd, 1939, the son of landowner Sir Kenneth Billington Bill Ington and Hungarian socialite Valdana Kazal. It was during a stop-off at Budapest from his charity swim of the Danube that his father met Valdana, at a reputable gentleman's club, in fact, for appreciation of contemporary dance, a night of unknowing sacred significance and power, pure in their oblivious lust. These were the first chargings of passionate embers, the first tectonic current, the flow of lava and thrust of natural crust against crust, before the monumental cultural eruption that was their sun. The rouge lighting dusted Valdana's pink blushing cheeks, the music simmering with the pulse of Shaka Khan rumbling through the floorboards and lino. Against her will, the two fell madly in love, he with her liberal interpretation of the Lindy Hop, and she with his wit, charm, and pockets. By the day of Stephen's birth, his parents had known each other for a mere 9 months. Nonetheless, they reared him affectionately at the family estate in Buckinghamshire, home of the Billington Bill Ingtons for some 15 generations, gifted to Sir Godfrey Billington by James I for his jest at court and impeccable choice of coloured garters. It is necessary to gloss these details, since, as has been mentioned, we owe Stephen's parents a great debt. These early years were of specific significance, for they were the creative anchorage for Stephen's future work. This diverse and unique social milieu in which he had reared left him with an abundance of experiences to draw upon during his later frenzies of creativity. It was at Billington Manor that his deeply considered and intellectual disgust for most people was really discovered. His developing passion for all things, in their thingness and grandeur, arose primarily from his passionate hatred for class. He felt no specific prejudice towards groupings, ethnicity, or race. He accepted all cultures and creeds, from the erudite Surrey thespian to the merry northern drunkard, from the babbling Spaniard to cowardly Frenchman to sly Chinaman. He was culture-ed indeed. His feeling of repulsion towards the dirty, neat Scythian classes was rooted more understandably in their seeming rejection for things. He had a pure and honest appreciation for many things around us, which we so oft neglect. It might be said that he appreciated their objectivity and stability and courage in the face of the circus flux that is the modern world. The pure thingness of the things excited him in their quintessence and grace. He was concerned with the servants' seeming lack of regard for objects and goods in their resignation to a life of cleaning his shoes and rubbing his belly after meals as a lazy teenager. He projected his rage, of course, occasionally vomiting on them in fury or pinching their eyes to try and provoke them into revolt from their laborious slumber. As a child, his parents were known to spoil him. In retrospect, this was no great crime, but spoil the joyous cherubim they did. It is true they once paid for a life-size train set for Stephen's 12th birthday. The set ran from Buckinghamshire to Worcester and contained real coal and living passengers. This was later to be purchased by the government as part of a national rail project. An elderly plumping maid of Billington Manor recalls of Stephen.
You were a brat. I remember Miss Billington and Mr. Sir buying him a whole kilo of biggledy pips and an entire tub of wibbly tiddlers when he were whinging, and he still wouldn't shut it. Little beggar were never satisfied. I mean, he was well known for breaking the legs of the family dogs when feeling a bit bored of a Sunday morning. Broke their legs, he did. I wanted to wallop him round the head with a girt big pie, but I couldn't, for fear of his crying and me getting sacked out on me arse.
But those Elysian days of abundant wibbly tiddlers were not to last. He was sent to board at Rumpington Court under headmaster Gerald Colompton.
Ah, yes, young Bollinghurst. Billington... Pardon? Yes, Billington. Certainly, young Billington, a fabulous cricketer. Fine leg, silly point, strong off drive, as I recall. Weak in the field, mind you. A tendency to run from the lofty droppers, if you know what I mean. Lost us a game, in fact, against Crinklemarsh Women's Institute, one that I'll never live down at the clubhouse. An asset, nevertheless. No surprise that he became so lauded in the military. What's that? An artist? No, we never condoned that at Rumpington. We liked boys with a little gravy on their shoulders, soiled and thoroughly grazed. None of that art on my watch. I can't abide all those blithering pansies with their bloody ponytails and long eyelashes.
The most significant guardian Stephen found at Rumpington was his tutor, Winston Smith. He was known across the world as a skilled concert fiddler and expressionist artist who had come to teach art at the school in the twilight of his career in order to fulfill his passion for young, pliable minds, and in part his unique experiences in the sphere of art.
Well, I do remember Stephen's art. His art was certainly firm for a young lad. It had a firm youthfulness to it, a certain fleshy throb that few of the other buggers could ever provide. I think I was among the lucky few to truly reap the rewards of his art in those formative years. I taught him with a tender, yet firm hand.
Smith's intimate tutorship proved invaluable to Stephen's development, especially as the young man continued to nurture his outsider persona and disgust for sentient beings. He had few friends, but by his own choosing, and spent most of his time with things, awestruck at their majesty. During gym class, he is reported to have been adept at rope climbing, to the extent where he often refused to come down. Some people said he was marvelling at the coarse weave of the rope, whilst his classmates inanely japed below. Perhaps his true breakthrough came in the autumn of '55, when, 3 weeks after disappearing during a cross-country run, Stephen was discovered chest-deep in a bog. Quite serene, he was seen sculping the soft mud into a great phallic mound, laughing the hysterical laugh of the unchained id. Realizing this enigmatic expression of genius, Smith took Stephen on the grand tour, personally escorting him around Europe, instructing him however he could. On his return, Mr. Smith was arrested and put on a special register, leaving Stephen at liberty to practice his newfound skill.